Welcome back to Top 10 Scary Urban Legends. I'm your host Andrew, and today we're going to talk about the top 10 houses with horrifying backstories. At number 10 spot, we have the Turpin family house. David and Louise Turpin's 13 children grew up in a highly controlled environment. It was so abusive that when the media raided their home and discovered what the kids endured all these years, they dubbed their home the House of Horrors. Their eldest sister Jennifer mentioned that the siblings were only allowed to eat once a day and bathe only once per year. They were reportedly left starving while the couple enjoyed eating junk food. The kids were beaten up upon the slightest attempt to steal food from their own parents, and the children were punished for the silliest things and even faced violent beatings from both their parents. Louise once pushed one of the siblings down the stairs for entering her bedroom while their father beat them with sticks and belts until they bled. The police found that the children were malnourished and some were even chained up. There were even lots of filth found inside of the rooms, and it was reported that the children were forced to live around such filth, including rotten food, spoiling garbage, and the sight and smell of feces. At a number 9 spot, we have the White House. Of course, the White House is on this list. However, I could only pick one point. William Harrison was the 9th president of the United States and holds the record for the least amount of time as president, just at 31 days. But his ghost has been there way longer than that. Passing away from pneumonia, William Harrison would also be the first person who died inside of the White House. Not the greatest achievement, I guess. Now witnesses report unexplained noises coming from the attic, specifically over the area of Yellow Oval Room, which has now been connected to Harrison's spirit. Now there is a complete third floor that has replaced the attic. However, workers still report seeing Harrison roaming the halls and his own room. His apparition appears to take on a blue glow with him coughing profusely due to his pneumonia. Although no harm has been done by his ghost, the third floor seems to be avoided as much as possible for those who work at the White House. At number 8 spot, we have the Haymond House. Located in Sutton, Braxton County, West Virginia, is the Haymond House. Built in 1894, the William Haymond House is a very historic place in the state with its rich interior craftsmanship and rare decorative materials. However, going through more recent owners and visitors, the locals now claim that there are more than a few spirits living inside of the home. During the time Haymond lived at the house, he suffered the passing of his 8-year-old granddaughter and another one of his family members who died from strangulation. Visitors claim that the mirror in the foyer is guarded by a gray-haired woman, while the second floor is haunted by a woman in white. At a number 7 spot, with the Ferry State Plantation home. With 11 spirits calling the Ferry State Plantation house their home, Haunted House seems like a fair title for this site. Now used as a museum and educational center, the house also offers Halloween tours called the Stroll of Lost Souls, and it's also a regular site for ghost hunters and paranormal activity groups. The story goes that this house was used originally as a school, tavern, and then eventually a mansion. Once the mansion burned down in 1828, it was reconstructed by abused and mistreated slaves. The house's many spirits included the woman in white who fell down from the stairs and the slave named Sally Walk, who is said to still be grieving for her late fiance. But the most famous one here is Grace Sherwood, who is named the Witch of Pungo. She was in fact the last person convicted of witchcraft in Virginia, having to spend 7 years in jail and later being released. But when she passed away, reports say that her body disappeared without a trace, leaving many to believe she truly was a witch. At number 6 spot, we have the Thawi Watthana deserted house. This is a supposed cursed house where everyone who has entered the house would be met with a terrible fate. In the Thawi Watthana district of Bangkok, rumor has it that in 2015, a group of early teenagers entered the home. They were just out partying, so they entered the home drunk on alcohol and high on other narcotics. The reason they entered the home was because many locals claimed that the house was indeed haunted. So the boys decided to go check on it for themselves. This ended up being a very terrible decision later on. It said that whoever enters the house will have one of the home spirits attached to them. It wasn't until 3 months after when 2 of the boys were fatally wounded in a motorcycle accident, and then a year later, a third boy also got into another fatal accident. Then in the next year, 2 more of the boys lost their lives in a house fire. The odd thing about these deaths was that the witnesses claimed that they saw a woman in white sitting on the backs of the motorcycles before their accidents, and also they saw the woman in white at the house before the fire. In the hump of our list, we have House of Horrors. The only horror movie to win Best Picture Oscar, Silence of the Lambs, made Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter a chilling household name, while putting Thomas Harris's bestseller and the true crime cases that inspired it into the national spotlight. I know Hannibal was a different type of beast, but he was inspired by a real-life serial killer named Gary Hednick. He was probably the furthest from being good, as he was Philadelphia's most notorious criminal. He was infamous for his House of Horrors, where he would do unimaginable things to 6 different women that I I can't even mention in this video. Even in the movie, Hannibal asks Starling, quote, "What does he do? This man you seek," in which she replies, "He attacks women." They could have easily been talking about Gary Haydnick in this scene, especially since he inspired Buffalo Bill as well. Number 4, the Villisca Axe Murder Home. On June 10th, 1912, Josiah and Sarah Moore were bludgeoned till they ended up passing away inside of their home in Villisca, Iowa. Their 4 children and 2 friends who were spending the night also passed away, and to this day, the crime remains unsolved. Their home is considered to be one of the most haunted houses in the country, and guests are drawn to it still. People even pay $400 to stay just one night in this home, and tours have been cut short by children's noises, falling lamps, moving ladders, and even flying objects. And even in 2014, a paranormal investigator stabbed himself after spending a night at this home. Number 3, the house on Ridge Avenue. In the north side of Pittsburgh lies where it's also known as the house the devil built. The house is also 1129 Ridge Avenue and known as the Conglier House. It was built in 1860s by Charles Conglier, who lived in the house with his wife Lyda and their maid Essie. The maid and Charles would be having a secret affair, and soon after, the wife overheard what was happening, so she collected a knife and a meat cleaver and proceeded to murder the two. She would be found later humming lullabies as she rocked on her chair. Then in 1900, Dr. Ada Brunreicher purchased the home. One day, the neighbors heard a woman screaming in the house and called the police. Once the cops arrived, the doctor was nowhere to be found, but instead there was only the body of the woman with no head. Then a single mother and her 5 children lived there in the 1920s, until a nearby natural gas tank exploded and killed the mother, causing the 5 children to be left abandoned. Although the tale is said to be fabricated, many of the stories about this house are indeed true. Number 2, Tulsa's Hex House. Located on 10th East 21st Street in Oklahoma, is the remnants of a home that was once a horror house. The owner of the home during the 1940s was a 45-year-old woman named Carolyn Smith. However, she wouldn't be the only resident in this home, as she would keep 2 other women there as quote-unquote slaves. These 2 women were named Virginia Evans and Willetta Horner, who were 30 and 31 years old at the time. They claimed that they're being hexed by Carolyn and were basically forced to give their paychecks directly to her, with their big reward coming when they arrived in the gates of heaven. Basically, Carolyn would keep these 2 women in her basement and just live off their checks. But that wasn't all. She would also receive request aid from one of her slaves' parents, in which she received a total of $20,000 for nursing care. After the 2 women were suspected of missing, a police investigation eventually found them in prison in this home, living in the worst condition, and this was during a span of 7 years. Carolyn would only get subjected to 1 year in prison, and the house was demolished, with a parking lot built on top of it. However, some believe that the basement is still underneath this parking lot. At a number 1 spot, we have the Amityville House. 30 miles outside of New York City, nestled in the Long Island town of Amityville, stands a house forever linked to the Amityville horror phenomenon. On November 13, 1974, the estate was the scene of a horrible event. Using a .35 Marlin rifle, 23-year-old Ronald Defoe took the lives of his entire family while they were asleep, which included his parents and 4 siblings. 13 months later, the Lutz family purchased the home at a drastically reduced price of $80,000. But only lasted 28 days before leaving it. Their spine-tingling tales of paranormal activity are what propelled the legend of the Amityville horror, and spawned a torrent of books, documentaries, and even films. George was said to wake up at 3:15 a.m. every morning, which is around the same time Ron carried out his murders. The Lutz family claimed many things happening in the home, like the smell of strange odors, see green slime oozing out of the walls and keyholes, and experience cold spots in certain areas of the home. When a priest came to bless the house, he allegedly heard a voice scream, quote, "Get out." He told the Lutzes to never sleep in that particular room in the house ever again, and ever since, this legend has carried on. Well, these are the top 10 houses with horrifying backstories. What do you guys think about this list? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, but don't forget to like and subscribe for some more content. I'm your host, Andrew, and I hope you guys have a scary day.